All right, what's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we got another fight breakdown. The main event this weekend on the dazn pay-per-view. David Benavidez is going to be defending his WBC light heavyweight title against Anthony Yarde. Okay, this is going to be a dazn pay-per-view. I will be live. I actually just dropped the video for Devin Haney against Brian Norman Jr., which a lot of people feel that should have been the main event of the card. I know that's a fight that people are talking about the most because it's a true 50-50 fight, like even on the betting odds. Totally even, 100% even. But this David Benavidez seems to be like a 12-1 favorite to beat Anthony Yarde. I think that is maybe a little too high, but at the same time, David Benavidez should definitely be the favorite going into this fight for sure. You know what I mean? I've been paying attention to a lot of things. I did watch the face off between the two, very friendly, lot of respect for each other. David seems to be real chill unless his opponent does a lot of talking. And I think when he fought David Morrell, I think there was a lot of back and forth with that fight. It was a lot of back and forth with Caleb Plant. But with Demetrius Andrade, there was a lot of respect between them two. You know what I mean? So it really depends on that. But this will be Benavidez's third fight up at light heavyweight. He's been super middleweight for just about his whole career. He's been a pro since he was 16. I think 16. Well, I know he was a pro since he's been a teenager. I don't know what exact year, 16, 17 years old. But he's been fighting since 2013, and he's 28 years old at this point. 30 wins, 24 knockouts, no defeats, no draws. And you got Anthony Yarde, who's 34 now, just recently turned 34, I believe. 27 wins, 24 knockouts, 3 defeats, 2 by stoppage, and 0 draws. Okay. Yarde, another great opportunity for him. This is his third chance at fighting for a title. I don't know if it's going to be his last chance, but he's fighting another fighter that has some potential in stopping him. This is not another easy fight. He's not one of those guys that got an easy title shot or fought for a vacant title. This is another really tough fight because I believe that since for years now, the two main guys at the light heavyweight division, Beterbiev, Bivol, they both split it 1-1, regardless of how you feel. Those two have been the two best fighters for years. It's been a long time since those two. I mean, I'm still happy. I still can't believe we actually got that fight. If it wasn't for Turkey Al-Sheikh, would have never got that fight. But those two have been the top for a long time. And I feel like the third guy that was at the top in the conversation since Kovalev and Adonis Stevenson and Andre Ward was Alexander Volstik, who got stopped by and gave the hardest fight to Beterbiev. But since then, I feel like it's been up in the air. Just Bivol, Beterbiev, and that's it. And I think the gap between those two and everybody else is pretty far, right? Because those two are pound for pound fighters. I still think they're both pound for pound fighters right now, and I feel like David Benavidez is like right there. He's either like the number 10th guy or probably top 12, somewhere between 9 and 12. I haven't even thought about doing a pound for pound list in a minute, but Benavidez to me is like right there, and I think he's the current best fighter outside of the top two guys. I still think the top two guys are better than him right now, but with time, I think Benavidez is going to have more of a chance of beating them if he faced them eventually. The longer he's there and the older those two guys get. Beterbiev is already in his 40s, I believe. So, Anthony Yarde, though, he's been in there with Beterbiev. He's been in there with Kovalev. I think he gave Kovalev's last real good performance. He was stopped in that fight. But I think Kovalev was that fight took a lot of them. I mean, I'm sure the Andre Ward rematch took a lot of them, but I think the Yarde fight really took a lot out of Sergey Kovalev. And at the time, Yarde was, I mean, the guy was fighting journeyman for a minute. Like, he basically fights, if we keep it real, I love Yarde. You guys know I love Yarde. I went out there to see him fight Beterbiev and everything. But if we keeping it real, like, journeyman, Kovalev, journeyman, Lyndon Arthur, who I don't I can't tell you how I felt about Lyndon Arthur before that fight because I really didn't know of him before that fight. But Lyndon Arthur winning that first fight made a name for himself, and it was a close fight because Yarde gave too many rounds away, tried to pop off at the end, got aggressive. It was just too little, too late. But then we gone back, had a rematch with Lyndon Arthur, beats him, stops him. Journeyman, again, these fights in between, just journeyman, and then he eventually ran into Arthur Beterbiev, gave us a classic, great fight, but he was stopped in that fight in 8 rounds. And since then it's been journeyman and then trilogy with Lyndon Arthur, which he won on points, but it was a tough fight, and that's where we at right now, and I ain't gonna lie, like I seen the Lyndon Arthur fight, I seen the Wilkins fight before that one. I believe that Yarde steps up on his best fights or his best opponent. You know, Unfortunately for Yarde, his best performance to me was against Beterbiev because outside of Bolstick, actually, the Bivol now, outside of Bivol and Bolstick, I think Yarde gave Beterbiev his best fight. You know what I mean? And I just think he performs based on the opponent. So I think with Yarde, he has the experience now. We can no longer say like he wasn't really boxing for a long time. He didn't have much of an amateur career. We can't say that anymore because this is your third title fight. You know what I mean? You already avenged the loss of the guy that beat you in between, but this is your third title fight. And I believe he's going to be at his best this weekend. But will it be enough? What does he really have to have over Benavidez? Now, the thing with Benavidez, he ain't no career light heavy, but he's a big guy. This guy is walking around. This guy used to be really fat, really chubby. This guy can probably easily walk around well over 200 pounds, you know? So when we say he's a bigger guy, when we're talking about Yarde, is he really a bigger guy? He might be a stockier guy. He might be a career light heavy, but is he bigger than him? Like, will size be a factor to Yarde? I don't believe so. I think Yarde, one clear advantage he has over Benavidez is possibly power, like one punch power. Um, but I don't know. Benavidez maybe not hit hard with every single punch, but he overwhelms you. Down at 168, he was stopping guys. Now that he's moved up, he hasn't really got the stoppage, right? But he still put a lot of work on those two opponents. He fought Volstick, he fought Dave Morrell. So what I do believe with Yarde here, he's finding another pressure fighter. Not quite like Beterbiev though. I still think that Beterbiev that night is better than the Dave Benavidez of this weekend, because they both are pressure fighters, but one is a really technical pressure fighter, counter puncher, whereas Benavidez is more of a volume puncher. Like Beterbiev he doesn't waste any punches. You know what I mean? He knows exactly what he's trying to do. Where Benavidez is more volume, missing, not the greatest technique, not the greatest feet, you know what I'm saying? Like he could be a little sloppier with it, but he's very effective with what he does too. And the thing is with Yarde, and doing like film study, I've been doing this film study for him and Benavidez simultaneously with Haney and Brian Norman, and just flipping through fights. And when I watch Yarde and Beterbiev, sometimes I feel like he is what he's going to be, but I can't say that he's really actually mastered his greatest strengths. And that's the one issue I have with Anthony Yarde. And maybe that has to do with the lack of, he's been fighting as a pro for like 10 years, but I can't really pinpoint what his greatest strengths are. Benavidez, with all the technical flaws he does, squaring up, lunging in, defense is just high guard. I mean, I think defense wise, I think he's a little bit underrated as far as defense because I think he's really, really good at blocking and parrying shots with his gloves and his forearms and stuff. I think he's really, really good at that. And I think he's really good at making his offense his defense. You take away your opponent's ability to attack you because of the amount of aggression he has, always coming forward. Don't know what he can really do on a back foot, but can a fighter really put him on a back foot? I think the only fighter that maybe be able to do that is maybe a Bivol or a Better Beer. I can't really see. I don't even know if Yarde is going to be capable of doing it, but I think at the end of the day, my point was that Benavidez, flaws and all, he's mastered his style. Whereas Yarde, he's still coming out of fights very early, very jittery. He's doing a lot of things. He's moving like this. He's measuring, but sometimes I don't even feel like he's being effective with it. It's like, then you have the shoulder roll thing, which is kind of flawed, like the way he does it. It's not like Brian Garcia bad, but sometimes it's just, I don't think he's that good at it. Defense, less and less head movement. When I used to watch Yarde back in the day, and when he used to just do those crazy lion in the cap videos and stuff with him and the team, like they look like him, his coach, his whole team, they look like they be having mad fun. And sometimes he displays great upper body movement, head movement and stuff. But in a lot of these most recent fights, it's like he goes into war mode, and I don't see the defense that I think he would be capable of, but he's been going into these wars. He's been in real wars now. Kovalev was a war. Beterbiev was a war. And defense is not really there. The jab, where's the jab? The jab has never really been effective like the way it should be or could be. You know what I mean? So I know I could go into more, like maybe talk a little bit about the lack of cardio he has. I don't think it's as bad as the Kovalev days. I think he's improved since then in knowing how to manage himself, but now he's dealing with another high volume puncher. And I don't think David is as good or as dominant as he was at 168. You know what I mean? He's bigger. He's fighting bigger guys. You know what I mean? The power ain't gonna be as effective. But I just don't think, like, I've seen him slow down. Seen him slow down against uh, Alexander Bolstick. Who was clearly gassed in that fight. Dave Morrell. Excuse me. I was trying to get that burp out for a minute. That's why I kept pausing. My bad. Dave Morrell, I'm sorry, Dave Morrell. I've said this before. I told you guys, I think Dave Morrell is overrated. I've been saying that since the Hot Rod fight. Like, he's overrated. You know what I mean? I have not been impressed with one fight with Dave Morrell since that fight, but it was a good win for Benavidez. But I don't know. Like, I'm looking at it like this. Yarde, less wide shots, more straight shots, and more uppercuts. I do believe that he needs to. I think he needs to at least buzz a Benavidez to have control, some sort of control here. I'm not saying he needs to knock him out. I'm not even saying that he can only win by knockout, but he needs to have Benavidez hurt, buzzed, or at least like drop him or something. You know what I mean? I say this about a lot of Benavidez's opponents. They gotta go to the body a little bit more, but it's really difficult because you go to the body, you leaving your upper body open, and Benavidez is coming forward. He throws straight shots right at you quickly, and then he puts himself in the square. He lunges in with a straight shot, and then now he's in a square position, and that's when he's, his feet are positioned, they're planted, and then he starts digging to the body himself, and he's very durable. You know what I mean? It's usually more durable than his opponents. So it's easier said than done. I think Yarde needs to go to the body more, needs to have a better jab. He needs to set up his punches better. you know. But I don't know if he's gonna have time to really think about doing that when Benavidez is all over him. Because that's what Benavidez, as far as strategically, that's all Benavidez needs to do. He needs to do what he always does. You know, parry those shots. That's what he does. As he's continuously walking his opponent down, throwing combinations to the body, counter punching. Plus, he might even be quicker as far as hand speed. He might be quicker than Anthony Yarde. I think he might have the quicker hand speed than Anthony Yarde, which is always also going to be a problem with Yarde. And I think Benavidez is probably a little bit more comfortable in on the inside in the pocket than Yarde. I think Yarde needs a little bit of space. Yarde, as you can see in a better BF fight, again, I don't think it's going to be as tough of a fight as that fight was, but Yarde don't want to be on the ropes like he was in that fight. He don't want to be on a corner. I think, if anything, if he can learn from anything from that fight, please get off the corner. I don't think he had the skills to trap better BF like the way he tried to. I think he caught better BF with some great shots in that fight. But I think he took more punishment in that fight. You know what I mean? By trying to lay those traps in those corners, when he put himself there. And sometimes better BF forced himself there. You know what I mean? With David, is just volume, volume, volume. And the punches might not hit as hard, but you become overwhelmed at some point. You know what I mean? Because it's just too many punches. So he has to keep moving. Please manage some sort of a jab here, like a real jab, not a lazy jab. Manage some sort of a jab. Set the right hands up. Again, more straight shots. Let's get those lead uppercuts in. We know David goes into that high guard. You're gonna step in, lead with an uppercut. Be a little bit unorthodox. Go to the body a little bit more and keep moving. He would be better in the center of the ring instead of have his back on the ropes for at least for as long as he can. And find a way when you are resting and you have, like, I'm hoping the team is preparing for this, but when you're resting, your back is against the ropes. Smother Benavidez. You know what I mean? Like, don't give him the space he needs to just throw a bunch of combinations on you. Smother his offense, like push in against him, so where you're protective somewhat. You know what I mean? Just don't put the high guard up, because Benavidez is going to be slapping your gloves down like he was against Morrell and punching you with the free hand. You know what I mean? Benavidez has just got way too much experience to me, and this is why a lot of this video is based on me telling you guys what Yarde has to do and what he shouldn't do. Because Benavidez, with all his flaws, yes, he's very hittable. Yes, he makes some foot mistakes, balance mistakes. His balance be off all the time. But he's great at what he's doing. He's actually perfected his style. Whereas Yarde, I still don't really know. I got Benavidez winning this one, right? I think he's definitely the favorite to win, and I'm expecting him to win. Is he win by stoppage? That's the part where I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure about the stoppage part. But that's where the money is at. As far as gamblers, you got to pick one or the other. There's more money in picking him to win on points, actually, which I think is a great chance. I mean, Benavidez didn't stop the last two opponents, but he could stop Yarde by overwhelming him. And I think there's a very good chance that he might, and I think that if you're going to pick a stoppage win, I would say after 10. I don't think it'll be as early as 8. I think it would be no earlier than 9. I think it's going to, if a stoppage were to go down, For Benavidez, it would be anywhere between the 10th and 12th rounds, if there is a stoppage. But as far as it going to points decision, I don't know, man. I think that's the only 50-50 part about this fight is whether or not Benavidez does it by stoppage or on points. I think Benavidez can probably get him out of here late. And I like Yarde. That's my guy. I love that dude. I like Benavidez too. Actually, Benavidez, I like them both. So I'm staying neutral on this one. I kind of want Yarde to win though. But I'm looking at a late stoppage, like very, very late. Just because I think at some point, I think Yarde can take his power, but I think Yarde will be unable to really throw at some point. You know what I mean? So I would say anywhere between 10 to 12 round stoppage or a decision win for Benavidez. All right. Anyway, should be a great fight. It's probably going to be the best fight on the card, in my opinion. I think it's the best fight on the card. It's going to be a great fight. It's going to be better than Haney and Norman, in my opinion. As far as action, I got Benavidez, possibly late stoppage. Anyway, subscribe to the channel, share the video, like the video. Please like the video, and I'll see you guys on the next breakdown. I got a couple more to go. See you soon. Peace.